business profitability, it rose to a record high, $2 trillion in the second quarter. You don't think cracking down on record high corporate profits would do anything to cool prices in our country?
First of all, you just said that oil profit were $2 trillion in the second quarter.
I said business profitability. That's the Commerce Department said business profitability rose to a record high, $2 trillion in the second quarter.
Our economy is only $24 trillion large. I think you just incorrected that figure. But anyway, let's move on to. We're not going to agree on this.
When Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson was confronted with the fact that corporate greed is leading to inflation in this country, he was shocked by it. He was in complete and utter disbelief. And of course, when we talk about corporate profits, we talk about the amount of money, or I should say profits they're able to do simply by price gouging Americans with their products, and basically citing inflation or the cost of these products going up as the reason for why they're jacking up the prices. But at the end of the day, when you listen to their earnings calls, it's abundantly clear that they're just piggybacking off of the inflation narrative to jack up their prices even when they don't need to, and that allows them to increase their corporate profits. Now, we looked at some more data. In fact, here's a graph showing corporate profits from 1950 to quarter two of 2022 using data from the US Bureau of Economic Analysis. And note that those graphs only account for non-financial industries. When you include the finance industry, the numbers are actually much higher. But you can see in this graph just how much corporate profits have gone up. Certainly since the 1990s, I'm sorry, the 1950s, but even if you compare like the last few years, you can see how corporate profits have increased. Now, in quarter one of 2021, it was $1.6 trillion. Quarter three of 2021 went up to $1.85 trillion. And then quarter two of 2022, we're up to $2.1 trillion in corporate profits. Now, in fact, if you take a look at the CEOs of utility companies, for instance, you'll also notice that, maybe their pay has a lot to do with the inflation that we're all dealing with. An analysis of Securities and Exchange Commission filings by Utility Drive found that the CEO of California-based Pacific Gas and Electric, also known as PG&E, the largest utility firm in the United States that has sparked many wildfires that have destroyed the lives of many Californians, thanks to the fact that they don't want to spend any money updating their equipment, received $51.2 million in total compensation in 2021, an increase of 640% compared to her previous year's salary. And this is what we see across the board. You literally have the corporate executives bragging about price gouging Americans during their earnings calls with investors.
Yeah, so the GOP has an idea of why we have inflation. It's the goddamn Biden and the Democrats. They just gave way too much to the American people, and it's largely the American people's fault. Now that idea has two different problems. Okay, number one, it ignores the fact that we printed trillions of dollars and did not give it to the American people. We gave it to the bankers and to the giant corporations. So they always leave that part out, and the mainstream media never holds them accountable because they're also a giant corporation. All of them are in mainstream media. So the talk of, oh my God, what caused the inflation? Econ 101, anyone who's gone to college, anyone who's taken econ knows if you print trillions of dollars in money, you're likely going to cause inflation. But remember, they printed it and gave it to the bankers, okay? And then they passed a much smaller bill for the rest of us. So it's amazing that everyone in the media leaves that out there by proving that they're doing corporate propaganda and not real news. Okay, number two is they say, well, it's what happened here with the Democrats and they caused it. Really? Because let's go to graphic 6 here and let me show you global inflation. If it was just the US and the Democrats who did it, America would have the worst inflation and everybody else would be totally fine. But as you see here now, let's look at it. Oh, America's got 8.2%. That's bad. That's not great. That's not a good number. Wait, the European Union has way higher. So does the UK, so does Germany, so does Italy, so does Spain. How come all those countries are higher than America's? And by the way, the UK has a right-wing government, okay? And a lot of them have right-wing governments. So, right-wing, left-wing, it doesn't seem to matter. America, other countries, it doesn't seem to matter. It's almost like it's a global macroeconomic event. Interesting. Okay, now, but when you get to the second layer of it, it's not just macroeconomics. That's certainly a part of it, and that's why you're seeing it in all the countries. But there's also price gouging. And that's also why you're seeing it in all the countries, because these are all multinational corporations that run businesses in almost all of those countries. So now let's go to graphic 7. So this is from a story we did last week. So this is a CEO of a supermarket chain, and he explains why they're raising prices so much. He said last summer, or they explain here in American Prospect, last summer, Kroger CEO Rodney McMullen said that, quote, a little bit of inflation is always good in our business because, quote, customers don't overly react to increase in prices. So what that means is, hey, we can price guys the living hell out of them, get corporate propaganda called mainstream media to cover for us, get Republicans to pretend it's the Democrats or some other nonsense thing that they made up, and then we can gouge all day long and take all the money out. Now, how do I know they're gouging? Because if it was truly just macroeconomic forces forcing inflation, both they would get hurt and the customers would get hurt. We would get hurt potentially equally. That's how normally market forces work. But that's not happening. Not only are they shifting all the pain onto us, but they're adding an extra layer of profit onto it. How do I know that? The numbers that Anna just read you. It's a verifiable fact. And that's why Ron Johnson flipped out when the reporter asked him about it. Because wait, if the companies just had to pass on all the price increase to you guys, why are they making record profits? Why did they make even bigger profits than before inflation? Oh, it looks like they're price gouging. And that's when a Republican senator goes, no way, I'm not even talking about this. This is really dangerous. Those are my beloved corporate donors. So credit to the reporter for asking a good question that rarely happens in American media.
Extremely rare. I mean, it's public radio, so I think you have your best shot with public radio when it comes to those kinds of questions. But again, guys, I mean, there has been some analysis done on earnings calls with corporate CEOs, and they just say it. And the reason why they have to say it is because they have to be frank with their shareholders. If they're not frank with their shareholders, of course, if they're lying to their shareholders, they could deal with fraud charges, which is laughable. I don't know if that ever really happens. But at the end of the day, they need to tell their shareholders, no, you have made a great investment because again, we are exploiting the inflation narrative to our advantage and just price gouging our customers to ensure that we can increase our profits and of course, return on investment for these shareholders. So one other thing I wanted to just quickly mention is the impact that this is having on ordinary people, which has in fact been devastating. Now, as we know, there has already been a problem with inequality, but that inequality has grown even more. And when it comes to individuals who need to pay for, like, let's say their utility bills, PG&E, for instance, is one of the main utility companies here in California. You know, there's some analysis done by the Bank of America that shows that nearly 20% of US citizens or US households either missed or have been late on a recent utility bill due to financial difficulty. I mean, just unbelievable, but they don't care. They don't care. If we're about to enter winter, people are gonna freeze to death. They don't care. They're making their record profits. That's all they care about. So.
Yeah, and PG&E is an absolute disaster here in California, and they wanted to lower their costs so they wouldn't bury their telephone lines. The telephone lines keep falling and causing fires, and they're like, yeah, well, why don't we just make the taxpayers pay for it and our customers pay for it? And they did. They passed on almost all those costs to us, and their CEO just got $51 million last year. So wait a minute, what happened to inflation? And oh my God, we all have to struggle together. It doesn't look like she's struggling, okay? No, they just, not only do they pass the costs on to you, they just give themselves giant salaries, even if their companies are failing, even if they're disasters. Why? Because there's no one left on the beat, okay? There are no cops on Wall Street. The Republicans took them all away and the corporate Democrats were thrilled to have the same situation because they have the same donors. And finally, guys, the only place where, this is so ironic, where you're gonna get any kind of honesty in America is on a shareholder call. Not because they're gonna be held criminally liable if they say something wrong, that's true. But there's no cops on Wall Street, so they don't care about that at all. But other investors can sue them if they say something wrong. You can't mess with other rich people. You'll have a civil lawsuit, besides which they want to brag in those shareholder calls, and there's no accountability anyways. Is the media gonna hold them accountable? Never, right? So they go on there and go, we ripped them off. We're the best at ripping them off. And they get more investment, and the band marches on.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.